Now, the European Union is taking a very interesting turn with Ursula von der Leyen at the helm because she is a champion of equality. A prosperous and social Europe depends on us all. We need equality for all and equality in all of its senses. She will not rest when it comes to building a union of equality. So there's a lot of talk about equality, but almost nothing about freedom. You see, a prison is a bastion of equality. Prisoners are equal to one another. They get free healthcare, they get free food, they get a free roof on top of their head, they get free security. The only thing they don't get is freedom. So I am really not a big champion of equality, especially when you look back into the history of humanity and you see what happened with people who champion equality. The French Revolution, with its great terror, is a really nice example where people would have been guillotined for misgendering another citizen. I know it is very difficult to comprehend in 2021 that someone could have lost their life just by saying the wrong thing, but it's true. Just read on the Jacobins and the French Revolution, and you will see that they changed the calendar as well as the way you're supposed to address other citizens. You're not supposed to address citizens with madam or mister. You're supposed to address them with citizen. If you do not do this, then you're against the revolution. Then you're an enemy of the people. If you're against the revolution or an enemy of the people, then the sentence is death. It was the same with people who used the old calendar. The old calendar was based in religion. Religion is superstition. And, of course, the French Revolution was a progressive revolution. And as such, you weren't supposed to believe in superstitious dogma. So using the old names of the month, if you said November or December, again, you're against the revolution. If you're against the revolution, you're an enemy of the people. You were part of the people 5 seconds ago, but now you're an enemy of them. And the sentence was death. So equality all around the world, whatever it was championed, it was a bad idea. Freedom, on the other hand, did create beautiful and prosperous nations. And there are many ideologues who will say that, oh no, nations that are based on freedom are evil, are exploitive. But if you shut that noise and you actually look at the objective fact that people are trying to go towards those nations, you will notice that the nations people try to run away from are the actual nations that are based on the concept of equality. So I don't care what people flap their gums. I look at the objective reality of things. Now, the reason I bring it up is because one of the more recent pushes for equality in the European Union come from this beautiful lady, which is having the same eyes as AOC. And these are the eyes of an authoritarian, which is happy to see you. And she says that equality mainstreaming means that all products need to take the equality dimension on board, including communication. In other words, we need to start thought policing people. A beautiful concept, very conservative, very rooted in tradition. The tradition of the Soviet Union, the tradition of the French Revolution, as I mentioned before. So, while in French Revolution, people would call themselves citizen, under communism, people would call themselves tovarish or comrade. But, very beautiful. I like that Europe is going back to its roots. I love that Europe is going back to its fundamental traditions of using the whip in order to make everyone equal. The only problem, however, is that we now need, just like in the French Revolution, just like in communism, to also get rid of religion. Because people have different religions, people have different denominations, and that is too problematic for a nation of equality. It would be much more simple if everyone was atheist, wouldn't it? So the word Christmas is now problematic. Now, I find it very interesting because in Germany, you have, for example, Christmas markets that are LGBT themed. You even have some TV shows where the characters like Maria and Jesus, they're progressive individuals with an LGBT bent. And you might think that that could potentially offend someone. But no one is talking about those as being offensive because they're offending the right type of people. You see, as they like to say before, equality means that some people get to be more equal than others. So if you happen to be part of a demographic that is more likely to support this agenda, then you're allowed to offend other people. Knock yourself out because your feelings are more important than that of other citizens. But if you happen to be part of the majority, then it doesn't matter if you're offended. It's actually good that you're offended so that you realize what a big bigot you are. So, of course, Ursula von Leyen doesn't mention anything about, oh my god, like Christmas LGBT markets are offensive because they have the word Christmas in them. No, that is progressive. That is the future. But simply just saying the word Christmas, that is offensive, of course. Yes, people shouldn't say it. In other words, when it comes to something as benign as the word Christmas, they can't just create one rule for everyone. This is what equality means. Is that some people are more equal than others. Why is it that you can't just make a statement, either Christmas is offensive in all of its forms, or Christmas is not offensive? Why can't you just pick one and have everyone be equal under this new concept? But whatever, this is Europe, it's not the United States, and Europe did experience a lot of authoritarian regimes that did try to crack down on gendered language and did try to crack down on freedom of religion. So it's not surprising that a lot of people have been very upset with this idea of censoring speech. Because people here know their history and they notice the resemblance of the atrocities in the past, which were committed in the name of equality, and the direction where things are going in the present. So maybe stop them now before they reach the destination. So you have the Orthodox Church complaining about it, you have politicians complaining about it, and I was a little bit surprised to see the Pope also complaining about it, because the Pope is a very progressive man. Feel free to do this thought experiment. See how many times the Pope criticized an authoritarian regime, whether that is a socialist regime or it's China or anything like that. See how many times he actually criticized them, and then compare it to how many times he criticizes liberal democracies. And tell me the results, because I can't think of many times he actually went and criticized authoritarianism. But here you have Pope Francis comparing the EU to fascists. So I just want to point out that the Pope needs to study a little bit of religion, not a lot, but just a little bit, to know that the Vatican actually supported Benito Mussolini at the time. It kind of makes sense why, if you think about it. Because fascism was a reaction to communism. People saw the atrocities that are happening in Russia, and they went, all right, we don't want those atrocities to happen here. So that is why they created fascism. The Vatican was against communism because they would enforce atheism. In the Soviet Union, the Russians were heavily against any form of religion, and they did persecution towards people that were religious. Any religious denomination, by the way, not just Christianity. So they executed religious scholars, they sent people to the gulags, they mistreated people that were family members of religious individuals. As such, the government didn't want the same thing to happen in Italy. So they supported Benito Mussolini. This is known, Khaleesi. This is not like some hidden knowledge. Secondly, he is comparing the European Union with other authoritarian regimes, like the Nazi dictatorship. The Nazi dictatorship had soldiers, German soldiers, with the word Gott mit uns on their belt, which meant God is with us. So I'm starting to wonder what type of education did the Pope get. Now, don't get me wrong, the Nazis were against the Catholic faith. That is true. And they also tried to change religion and create something called positive Christianity, where Jesus Christ wouldn't have had a Jewish heritage, where they would focus more on the proactive things that Jesus has done, and every single positive Christianity church would also have a copy of Mein Kampf. So it is true in a way that the Nazis were heretical, but they were not against Christmas. And then he talks about Napoleon, another failure. Look, the French Revolution, which had the Red Terror and killed many people, was atheistic in nature. And they created this idea of the cult of reason, and they were very progressive and whatnot. And they managed to push away Catholicism from France. Only when Napoleon gets to power does he start bringing religion back in France and allowing Catholics to have a presence there. So, what is this Pope doing? Like, he is supposed to be an educated man, believe it or not, even though you may be an atheist, and you would think that religious people are uneducated and superstitious. When it comes to Catholic priests, they go to a university, so I'm really curious what exactly did the Pope study there. Because it's clearly not history. So there's just two possibilities. Number one, he knows history, but he chooses to lie to people. Or number two, he just doesn't know history. The only thing he knows is by watching movies and reading the media, but not actually reading from historical literature. Which is a little bit concerning, you would think, but whatever. At least he does mention the communists. Yes, communists, as far as I know, are probably the only ideology on earth which is fundamentally against religion. It's like state-sponsored atheism, if you will. If you're not an atheist, then you're not a good citizen. So you have different communist regimes tackling religion differently. From the communist regime in Romania, which allowed for religion and used the priests as informants. So when you would go to a confession, they would tell the secret police what you confessed, as well as the fact that it was only the working class and the lower, quote-unquote, social economic people that were allowed to practice religion. But when you go to the upper echelons, party members, secret police officers, ministers, and so on, they were heavily persecuted if they were caught going to church or holding a crucifix around their neck or whatever. So it really depends on the country you're in, but overwhelmingly, yes, communist regimes were de facto atheist. And fascism wasn't. Fascism, again, it's an ideology that tries to bring people back to extreme tradition, if you will. So because they're in Europe, they're obviously going to be very religious. And then you have Nazism, which, yet again, tried to do the same thing, like try to push religion heavily onto people to be in contrast with the Marxists. So, Pope, Father, please do me a big favor. When you're not giving likes to beautiful ladies on Instagram, can you please read a historical book? I mean, Christmas is coming, and clearly the Pope is celebrating, so maybe a Christian can give him a Christmas gift. Give to him a historical book so he can read a little bit about the history of Europe and the political ideologies that existed in Europe. Yeah, the only thing I can do is to pray so that God can give more wisdom to the Pope, so that maybe he can have a revelation and understand a little bit of European historical past. Other than that, great for standing up to the European Union. Very, very good that he actually stepped up and said, hey, wait a little bit, I'm a Christian, and if you're going to attack Christianity, you might take away some of my power. So I am glad that the Pope did have something to say, even though it was stupid and uninformed and uneducated. But other than that, I hope God will give him wisdom in the future. Let us all pray together, all right? Let us pray like really hard so that God can give wisdom to the Pope. Thank you guys for watching this, and do let me know what you think in the comment section, and I'll see you all there.